librarians are already doing a lot of work. So state librarians in Georgia right now are working with universities and with public libraries to do a Chromebook one-to-one for college students who currently don't have a computer at home. This is also happening with media specialists in schools. Public librarians here in North Carolina are opening up their parking lots to serve as Wi-Fi hotspots for people who currently don't have internet home, who are filling out job applications and unemployment forms. Librarians are already doing a lot of work on this issue. And I'm sure people in this audience have their own projects. However, if the most recent Pew Research data suggests is true, which I'm sure it is, the problem that's been magnified by the pandemic is much larger than we could anticipate. So right now, 43% of low-income families say that their children have to do their schoolwork on a cell phone since their schools have closed. Again, 40% of these low-income families say their children do not have access to reliable internet at home to do this homework. We know that there's reduced healthcare access for low-income families as healthcare organizations began to switch to telehealth. Nationwide has recently said that they are closing 5 of their regional offices and moving thousands of workers permanently to remote work. And so we know that without effective solutions to bridge the digital divide in our communities, that there is potentially a gap that's going to grow larger between those who have access to digital resources and that those who do not. The National Digital Inclusion Alliance says that the way we can close this divide is to be able to provide free and low-cost internet in people's homes, to be able to provide devices, and to be able to provide the digital literacy in order to actually use this technology. And I would argue that this is an urgent problem that we need to address now. So the question becomes, what role should libraries play in the digital divide? And so what we've done is we've tried to gather experts in this field to be able to talk about what are the best practices and what they are currently doing to bridge the digital divide right now. So we are going to move again in alphabetical order by first name. And what I would like each person to do is to give a summary of their digital equity work, both during the pandemic and generally, and to tell us how you and your organization are addressing the digital divide during COVID-19.
So as I said, my name is Abby Waldrop and I work at the State Library, which I would like to say is doing quite a lot of work about the digital divide during the coronavirus pandemic. One of which is administering the CARES Act money, which is coming through the State Library and will be in many libraries across the states following this application review that's coming up. But I work on one very specific project that I will be mostly talking about. I spent the last year and a half working on the Homework Gap project, which is intended to help families and students be prepared for online homework by teaching, instructing students and their parents in digital literacy and in providing home internet through Wi-Fi hotspots. So I guess one change in this post-COVID world is that I used to spend a lot of time explaining why that was a priority, but I assume I don't necessarily need to do that as much anymore. It's important and we all see why. And as relevant as our work quickly became when the schools began closing, many specifics of our project became outdated. The in-person workshops, which we were previously recommending, were really no longer viable. And the skills that we considered to be advanced and beyond the scope of our work, like maybe video conferencing, were suddenly necessary and crucial. So we are going to have to pivot on some of that. We expect that more parents are going to have an increased interest in learning the digital skills, again, less convincing that it's important and more getting directly to the learning, but we also expect that the parents are going to be more overwhelmed by the process of learning and by all the other things that they're taking on right now. So that's going to really affect the way that our communities are being able to implement these digital literacy instructions. So moving forward, we're going to have to adapt the curriculum and the program that we've created, both to these new skills that are needed by the families, but also the new methods of delivery. As for those new methods, we are going to attempt to move to completely remote instruction to deliver over the phone, assistance and instruction, and the library staff really need to be trained on how to do that, as well as hosting some video conference sessions as well. While we expect an increase in individual assistance, especially in those over the phone kind of conversations, which we think will improve the outcome for the families, we heard over and over that the conversations that parents are having with each other were really important to their experience learning digital literacy and seeing how it applied to their work with their students at home. So we want to try to figure out how to implement that and kind of the video conferencing or even just the phone group conferencing. It seems like the best way to go about that. We're hearing more and more from educators that the schools are working on device and connectivity needs, but the skill gap, especially in the parents, is a hurdle that they're not necessarily prepared or they need some help overcoming. And we think that libraries are positioned to help in this area. The libraries that we've partnered with across the state certainly are, and we want to be able to give them the resources to do that. So we're working on that now. Thanks.
I was about to start talking without muting myself first. I recently completed my PhD, and a lot of my PhD research was focused on the digital divide, looking at the 3 levels of digital divide in a developing country. And I used Nigeria as my case study for my work, where I looked at differences in the factors that affected if like the divide between the haves and the have-nots, which is the first level digital divide, those that have access and those that don't. I also took it a little bit further by looking at the second level digital divide, where I looked at what kinds of activities people carried out online, how frequently they connected to the internet, how much broadband, like how much bandwidth they were consuming in a month, things like that. And then knowing that technology is, which we've all talked about here today, is not an end, but instead it means to an end. So people use technology to achieve a particular outcome. And in the 3rd level digital divide, my work looked at what kinds of outcomes people got from using the internet. So for example, if people were more likely to use the internet for personal development activities like online learning or applying to jobs, were they able to see those kind of outcomes in their everyday real world life? Were they able to see, were they able to complete the online training? Were they able to see an improvement in their work, in their work achievements? And currently at North Carolina Central, I am working in with a group of students where we're looking at different ways that North Carolina can help through the COVID-19 pandemic. And in one of the teams, the students are currently working with the Broadband Infrastructure Office to address the digital divide, in particularly with respect to libraries. And it's basically going off one of the points that Abigail touched on, which is helping parents to have the skills to help their kids at home with homework, especially parents of students in K-12 schools. And so what we are working on at NCCU is helping libraries to transition their digital literacy program from a face-to-face program in the library to an online remote learning program. So we're helping them to evaluate different frameworks that they can use to successfully transition this program online, and also help them to evaluate the program going forward to see if it's actually achieving the objectives that they have identified.
Shall I pick up where you left off? Okay, again, I'm Gwen Weaver, and I am going to piggyback on my 2 colleagues' work. Let's see, I'm trying to decide. I have been having this problem all day, trying to decide whether to start at the local level and work my way up, or national level and work my way down. But I think I'll do a little bit of both. Again, one of the areas in which I am very interested, but which ties in with the work that both of my colleagues have been talking about, is adult literacy and adult learning, and particularly these days because of COVID-19, digital literacy and digital skills for adult learners. So the general statistics that get quoted about adult learners is that there are at least 36 million adults in this country who have low literacy. And these days, because of COVID-19 in particular, but life in the 21st century in general, a lack of digital skills means that these adults cannot fully participate in life. And when I say in life, and I'm going to just read some things that I'd previously written, because digital technology has become the driving force for so many aspects of life, people cannot take advantage of education and learning, especially for work. They can't manage their finances. They cannot participate in civic engagement activities. They cannot deal with their health and wellness needs. And very specifically, they cannot deal with the needs of their children, and especially now that the children are online, unless they are digitally literate. So digital inclusion is one of the concepts that we're talking about that will help people be able to embrace the digital world to the fullest. The issue here, though, is that, and again, this is kind of jumping in and out of both local and national issues. The digital divide is alive and well, particularly in North Carolina, which we all know. And one of the issues that we've discovered at my local organization, the Durham Literacy Center, is that at least a third of our students have no access to the internet, and they are in the city of Durham, North Carolina, which makes no sense to me, that they would be in a city with that type of, and this is not a unique situation. There are many urban adults as well as rural who have no access these days. So a big issue that many libraries actually are trying to address is to help that. You know, initially when we were still open, I say we because I am a former librarian, retired, thank goodness. But libraries have been trying to help address this issue by doing things like opening up their Wi-Fi. Many libraries are still circulating equipment, or at least trying to, and doing the best that we can. But at the same time, we need support from other entities. So again, one of the areas that I've been looking at is where the intersection of adult literacy and learning is with digital inclusion. And libraries have been a big part of resolving that issue. And I'll stop here because otherwise I'll just get on a soapbox. I'm going to let Seth pick up from here.
Gwen, you could just go and it'd be fine. I'd listen. Well, good morning. Here in Charlotte, the things that we have been working on, just to give you guys some data about my community. Currently, the stats look like 11% of Mecklenburg County is without broadband adoption, which on the surface sounds really good. But when you start to really dig deep into the data and look at different census tracts, doing some research in our worst census tract, that adoption is sitting at 30%, meaning the other 70% do not have broadband access. So this is very much an urban issue as well as a rural issue. And it's probably no surprise to anyone on this call that these divides follow systemic racial and social economic divides in our community. So to kind of talk about what we've been doing in light of the pandemic and in light of the digital divide, I think probably like many on this call, there was the first couple of weeks in March where we're all like, oh my gosh, my hair's on fire. What can we do to digitize our offerings? And we did a pretty decent job, if I could say that, to kind of stand up digital services very quickly. We've had some experiences in that, but the problem is, and the problem that I'm sure we're going to talk a lot about today is, while we can stand up digital services, we cannot provide access to folks when our library branches are closed. And that is just that's the number one critical killer of what librarians typically do. And so kind of as a result, I've been really working in our community. I convene the Charlotte Digital Inclusion Alliance, which is a kind of an alliance of like-minded folks and institutions who are working to combat the digital divide, to ensure that we're not duplicating efforts, to ensure that we're being strategic with our resources. So we've been meeting monthly, and really our meetings have had a lot new energy here during COVID times. We've also been working to kind of upgrade our digital offerings. We're working to ensure that our digital chat channel, for instance, will have a SMS feature so that we can expand access for folks who may not have access. We've also been really working hard to apply for IMLS grants that would prototype some new ways to access the internet in some non-traditional ways. And we're also working with our county to kind of deploy some CARES money to hopefully bring devices to people who don't have them in Charlotte. Currently, the data in Charlotte is that 20% of households do not have a computer in the home. That works out to be about 80,000 people, or 80,000 households. So we've got a lot of work to do. So we're kind of working in those veins.
Thank you for the background of what you guys are doing. I have a follow-up question that I would like to ask Dr. Okobo and to Ms. Waldrop, and anyone on the panel could answer this as well. But really, I'm just curious, both of you mentioned either thinking about how can you teach digital literacy skills online, or like moving in that direction. And I'm just curious what you guys have come up with. Like, how do we teach digital literacy skills when we can't be there in person with those that we are serving?
You want me to go first, and you want to go first this time, or easy?
You can go first.
Okay. Well, you know, a lot of it is I am operating theoretically. I know there are organizations that are not. I know Cramden, for example, has already done some online classes, and there's some people I'm sure you can talk to, but we are thinking about how to kind of make a hybrid of like phone calls, individualized service, and then we would like to be able to do some like synchronous group discussions and kind of like tutorials, but there are so many resources as well that can be given asynchronously, particularly online, for people who can get online. So they're just, I think what we're going to be trying to do is working with individuals to define their goals and their needs, and then connect them to whatever resources they need individually, which hopefully we can give them some asynchronous things they can work through at their own time, that they can download if they can get to Wi-Fi and take home with them. But really walking through with them to get them to that bare minimum where they can work through those things on their own. And then hopefully also accessing or fulfilling their needs as far as if they do need a device, if they need access to internet at home, and trying to connect them to those resources to get again to that base level of being able to access the internet and get to the plethora of resources there are there to help a person get caught up on different digital skills individually.
So I'm just going to add, I totally agree with everything that Abigail has said. In the project that we are working on at NCC, it's kind of taking a little bit different approach, which is more like evaluating the different, or coming up with a way to evaluate if the online learning process is successful or not. As opposed to actually, I guess, coming up with specific online learning methods. So that's why I wanted Abigail to go first, because I think she knew more about this particular topic than I did.
We also have oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to add, you know, that the National Digital Inclusion Alliance right now is pushing the concept of digital navigators. And that idea is that they are people who basically handhold the learner and walk the learner through the process of learning in various ways, depending on it depends on what level the learner is and so on. One of the things I've found through the literacy center that I'm involved with is that, again, literacy levels are very important as well. And that is, if you have people at the lowest literacy levels, meaning they read below like third or fourth grade, then you have to take a really totally different approach to trying to teach online and teach them how to actually be functional in a technical environment. And it takes a lot of one-on-one work to do that, but it is doable. I think it's going to be somewhat difficult for libraries by themselves, but I think in partnership with other types of organizations that it's something that would be doable as well. Sorry, Abby, go ahead.
That's okay. I just saw a question in the chat a few minutes ago I thought we might want to get back to. I think when you were speaking, I think you mentioned who doesn't have access to broadband, and there was a question about the definition of access and whether that is there is no internet they could adopt had they the ability to get internet financially, or if it means that they don't have internet at home for whatever reason.
Or that there's no access they don't have access. In other words, there's no wire
Right.
to the wall, no wire to the home.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, not having access, and I think, and again, I'm going to probably continuously refer to NDIA because they've done a lot of the work and have a lot of the information, or they have links to a lot of the information. And I did drop that into our document, the NDIA web address. But, and Seth, jump in because I know you know this stuff too. But really, not having access could mean, again, there's no wire to the home. Even if there is wire to the home, there may not be a vendor who's affordable. One of the issues that we're running into again with our literacy center, like I said, we've got a bunch of students who don't have internet access. And even if they lived in a neighborhood where they had a wire coming in or a wireless, they could not afford the monthly fees without being able to take advantage of one of the low-cost services. And then there are lots of issues and questions about that. Seth, please jump in. You're nodding your head, and I know you know this.
Well, I'm reacting too to some of the questions, like Kelly's talking about people who rely on cell phones only. And I would say if you have a cell phone, that's a lifeline device. That is not having a dedicated device though to leverage the internet for what it's worth. Like I think, I don't know if anybody's ever tried to apply for a job on a cell phone. I know that people do, but like that is such a just an anchor to being effective in this economy. And so while I do think, websites have really worked to become mobile friendly and things have changed to make that easier, I think really when we're talking about access and having a device, we're talking about having 24/7 access at your house or where you live or where you stay. It's not this idea where I'm going to McDonald's. Like, we're talking about having that dedicated access that most of us have the privilege to use and leverage for professional and personal things. So that's what I would say to that.
The other issue with cell phones is that a lot of people, again, don't have unlimited data plans.
Correct.
They really just have some level of voice and text
Mm-hmm.
and not much else.
I was trying to break down how many gigabytes we actually need of data. And so on average, someone might use 34 and a basic plan might have 4. And that calculates out to about 12 days of schoolwork at 4 hours a day without time for homework. So if you're looking at it, a kid can't fully participate in school with a cell phone.
I think too that sorry, Kate, not to jump ahead. I think what COVID has showed us is that these inequities, now it's going into our public education system. So it's not a fair ask for families who cannot afford or do not have access to suddenly be asked to contribute to the educational ask that's happening now, where we're saying, well, we're only doing virtual schooling, which I mean, personally, I support. I understand that. I mean, we got to keep kids safe. But the other thing is, that's a huge. It's just not. We're making a lot of assumptions that people are coming to the table with the same amount of comfort and economics to participate. So we need to move to make this all free and make it a utility. That's what I think. So.
Yeah, and honestly, we as libraries are contributing to the widening of the digital divide, because as we try to make more things available that we used to in person, we put them online. You know, that's what we've been doing for the last 6 months because it's all that we could do. And that's not bad because it makes things available to more people, but we have to think about what we're contributing to and how we can, you know, help bridge that divide that we have created. And we think, I'm jumping ahead too, but we talk about what we have done and what we can do as far as like parking lot Wi-Fi and lending mobile hotspots when we can. And these are great offerings that we should do, but having parking lot Wi-Fi is not bridging the digital divide for a family who might have to drive an hour to get to a library and there's no bathroom open because everything's closed. You know, they can stay for 20 minutes to do homework and then go home. And so we have to think about these like more long-term sustainable solutions for families that will help them with all of their digital needs. You know, my project is focused on homework help and it does a good job on that, but it's not helping maybe the parents do those job applications. You know, we may not have the resources for all of that built in. So we need to think about the holistic, you know, family problems with the digital divide.
I think that's where, and again, I think we're all over the map, Katie, I'm sorry. But I was going to say that's where partnerships come in too.
Yeah.
Again, for libraries in particular, you know, because we can't, again, and I say we as libraries and librarians, we cannot address all of the issues that are part of the digital divide because they're wealth issues, they're poverty versus wealth issues. You know, they are health and welfare issues. There are civic engagement issues as well as education. But libraries have been traditionally good organizations for doing collaborating and partnering. And I think this is where we're going to be really, really, you know, to address the issue of the digital divide. That's where the partnerships and collaborative efforts are going to be significant.
Yeah, and Gwen, to your point, I think what libraries can do, though they can't change, you know, the community overnight, they can develop projects that point to a greater impact. So a library could catalyze their county or their city government to say, wow, this is a really big issue. Look what the library's done in this instance. And I think that's a really important thing to say. You know, I'm not a technical expert on any of this, but I can convene with technical experts to go in on a grant project together. I think that really needs to be our role, is to kind of push everyone to see a different future with this technology and with this access. So that, if I were going to advocate for all the librarians here, that's what I'd say do, is like, what can you do? What can you do to push people who have more power and resources to make better decisions?
So I think both what Gwen and Seth are great, are saying about partnerships. I want to talk a little bit more about that. What partnerships are you guys doing and how did you develop them, and how can our librarians who are currently listening to this call develop these partnerships in order to bridge the digital divide?
I keep going first because I'm alphabetical. I don't have to keep going first, but I'm happy to, because I really would like to thank our partners. I didn't take the time to do that earlier, but I have worked with a lot of people on our project throughout the last year and a half. The local library staff in Hyde County, Caswell County, Mitchell County, and Robinson County, where we work, as well as the local schools. So in our program model, the local libraries have hotspots they lend out, and they are the ones who teach digital literacy workshops, but they partner with the local schools to identify families that need the devices. The schools are really helpful in communicating with the families. Sometimes if a library lends out a hotspot, it might not come back, and the number they have doesn't necessarily work anymore. But the school partners have really been able to get a hold of families and make sure that they have what they need and understand the issues. So that partnership has been great. They also provided facilities when that was the thing that we used. But there's always a difference in those partnerships in each location. So I think identifying, especially in a smaller library with fewer resources, if you think there's something you can't implement because you don't have the resources, identify what you're missing. And then you can find partners who have that. And that is how these libraries and schools work together, because in some places it was the facilities they needed, and in other places they needed a little help with the instruction. So just working with the partners that help there. But on a broader context, we worked with the Broadband Infrastructure Office of the North Carolina Department of Information Technology is our partner on every step of this project, including the application of our grant. And they have been great giving us context with the data and helping us identify solutions that will have a greater impact. And I would advocate anybody who's working on digital literacy and digital inclusion to at least know about them and understand what they have to offer. But we also have worked with partners in the North Carolina Digital Equity and Inclusion Collaborative, which you all are all partners of, and here on the panel, and the National Digital Inclusion Alliance, which we have talked about. They have great resources, and you can find great advice from people who may not be full partners on a project, but if you have a question, you can send it out to them, and they have really good information on digital inclusion work. So I would always recommend going to them.
Yeah, I think you've hit a lot of points, Abigail. I think I'll add one, being that I'm from academia, I would just say also look to partner with academic universities, especially to help with research, in order to understand better what has been done before, even though this is, like, the pandemic is unprecedented, but there most likely would be projects that have been conducted in the past, or frameworks that have been used in a different context that could be applied to your local library. So definitely partner with academic institutions, and I think that's something to also consider.
And thank you to you for doing that for us on the next step of our project. I neglected to say that.
Shall I add a little bit more as usual? I'm probably thinking slightly differently, and again, focusing more on the adults. And that is, and I did drop this into the document, Katie. There's an organization called Digital US, that is a collaborative effort of a lot of different, and this is more at the national level, but it's a collaborative effort of a lot of different organizations to try to build opportunities for adults to build their own digital skills. And it really is focused on workforce development more so than, it's not really focused on education, it's not really focused on libraries. But again, one of the things that the Digital US collaboration has recognized, and this was before the pandemic, and it will be even more important now, again, is that libraries as an institution play a significant role in helping people build their work skills. We always have, and we always will, whether we're in the building or not. So that's another way of looking at collaborations and partnerships, is looking across not only your local ones, but also across what's going on nationally.
Yeah, I'll jump in and just, we've been a very orderly panel, by the way. We're following a pattern. It's really cool. Okay. What I'll say is I think it's really important that that the library take a leadership role in the community. I think that Charlotte's really benefited from having a Digital Inclusion Alliance. I think it's really helped us kind of be better positioned for this pandemic. I'll say too, I would say something about community partnerships, and I just would encourage everybody in this. Community work is really, it's a lot of long-term work for not a lot of immediate results. And so I would frame that up just so that you know what you're getting into. But when you have established those relationships and that network and that trust, that network can come into play in a rapid way. And I feel like I've experienced that recently from the Digital Inclusion Alliance. and these COVID opportunities in terms of CARES money and all the different grants we can apply for. So that's been really encouraging. And I'm going to drop something in the chat just so that everyone is aware. There's an opportunity for everyone in the state from the Institute of Emerging Issues. There's a mini grant of $5,000 from Band NC. What I would say is I would recommend everybody, if you're interested in this work, who in your community is also interested? How can you begin having conversations? How can you begin mobilizing? And I think really what I would say too is don't not do the good thing because you're trying to make the perfect thing. Right now, good is great. Like, if you can only get one hotspot out there, awesome. Like, just please do something. I would just say, I think our job as librarians and as an institution is to push our community to better outcomes. So that's what I would say.
Excellent. Thank you for bringing up Band NC.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I've also heard them say they're trying to get this money out fast for Band NC. It's not a long application process. The goal is to infuse money into the community very quickly. So I would encourage you to look at that. I want to take the last 10 minutes that we have to really pay attention to the chat and to the questions that people have asked. So I'm going to move up a little bit. I want to just acknowledge that someone mentioned eGranary and Wider Net, which is out at Cliff Mason out of UNC Chapel Hill, is one of the people working on this. And Joan is talking about how it works as an internet and provides free access to millions of online documents for specific users. Yeah, I know that they've done projects for individuals who are incarcerated and in parts of the world that don't have a lot of access to the internet. So thank you for bringing that up. We have areas, I'm reading from Jerry, we have areas in my rural county where the major internet providers refuse to service. Yes.
I just popped in that state survey for that one.
Yeah.
Cool.
I just wanted to speak to that and a couple other comments about frustrations trying to get free internet offers. And the data around availability of broadband is notoriously flawed. And so if you have people who are looking at maps and seeing that they should be served and they aren't being served, that's a problem we're aware of, and filling out the survey is a great way to help get that data, improve that data. In the digital or the broadband infrastructure office is working on that. And they are partners that you can talk to about that. Your communities can talk to about improving the broadband available in your communities. But that's definitely a problem. We see that often. And even with the free and low cost offers that we are told are available, sometimes when you call, you get a hold of someone who is not aware of the information they need to give that offer to the individual. And so sometimes it takes persistence and disagreeing with people on the phone, which is difficult. But sometimes even when there's an advertised offer that's not being given, it's just a lack of information on the other end is what we're hearing on the ISP side.
Yeah.
I'd say too, a bigger issue is we need better internet laws in our state. We need more flexibility. And I'll stop off. I'm going to get off the soapbox, but yeah, we need to advocate.
That's a good soapbox, though.
Yeah, we need to advocate for more just laws where there are not communities in a stranglehold, where communities can take the reins and build out their own networks. Like, we know that works well. We have enough data to prove that. So, okay.
Right now, Durham is going to have its first digital equity convening, where we are bringing in the mayor and we're bringing in the county commissioner, and the libraries are participating in this. And so we're trying to.
Uh-oh.
Did we lose Katie, or is it just me?
No, I think.
Katie, you froze. Maybe if you turn off your video for a minute.
So I wanted to address one of the questions about turnover. So I just came from an organization where turnover happens every 2 years in leadership. And And so one of the things that we do in our larger statewide groups is always have two people serving the same function on an initiative. Always creating that redundancy and that shared power really helps. I know that's hard when you don't have much staff. But I mean, one of the questions that I've been asking myself and will continue to ask the panel is, what do we do for libraries with very little resources in terms of time, staff, and money to do this work? Anyway, I'll leave it there and let other people talk.
Yeah, I'll jump in, and Katie, you're right on the money for that question about turnover. You got to have a Noah's Ark rule. Always take two, and that way you're kind of covered, and it makes more systemic sense. I think in terms of folks with a lack of resources, I would just encourage everyone to go find coffee, go be friends with people in your community, like begin the conversation. I think many librarians and many libraries are underfunded. That's probably 100% accurate across the board, given our population sizes and who we serve. So let's just accept that reality. And I think really the power that we have is in our leadership and our relationships. So I double down on both of those and try to make connections where we can make connections.
Yeah, I would agree. I agree with Seth, like totally, that even if you're in a situation where you may be the only person actually running the place, it's building relationships, it's building those community relationships, finding your champion, finding folks that are your big supporters, and making sure that they stay in your corner, so that even if you don't have the time to do everything, there's going to be somebody who's going to back you up. Somebody's got your back, and that's what you want.
I'm currently pulling links out of the chat that we've shared and making sure they are on our Google Doc. So you might maybe share that Google Doc link again in case anybody wants to look at this.
Yeah, actually, I'll share my screen and so that people can really see what that is in addition to the Google Doc.
Oh no, I'm messing it up right now.
No, go for it. So, and I'll share this again in the chat box, but we've organized this with nonprofits specializing in digital equity resources, digital inclusion groups. What are libraries currently doing during the divide, libraries and COVID-19? So this is specifically webinars addressed to this issue and what people are currently talking about and doing. So I love that. Abigail,
I added that ALA resources because ALA recently put up that page that has links to things like plans. It has links to policy issues, but they kind of consolidated all their COVID-19 stuff under one page.
That's great. I'm going to drop that link back into the chat, and I hope that people continue to contribute to that and look at that as a resource so that you feel like you have something that you can take away and actually use. That was something that was really important for a goal for this talk, was that you left with an idea that was applicable to your community and to the people that you're working with. We have 3 minutes left. Are there any questions that people have? I want people to feel like they can ask them and feel acknowledged in their own expertise. All right. Where are folks continuing these conversations? Great question.
You can email me anytime. We'll continue the conversation. If there's enough interest, I'm sure that we could stand up a standing Zoom call. That would not be out of line. So if there's enough interest in that, just let Katie know, and Katie can stand it up. And I'll be
Yeah, I'll be happy to participate too.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would encourage you to get in touch with your digital inclusion group. I know that we have one forming in Durham right now, and we have one in Charlotte. There's one in Wilmington that is very new as well. And so I would encourage you to, one, have this conversation yourself and with us. I'm more than happy to continue to talk well after this phone call with people who are interested in being involved. And if people want to drop, we can drop our emails in the discussion if people are interested in giving them. Our emails on the panel, I feel like if everyone put their email in there, I'd never get all of the emails. So we'll include some information if people want it. I'm going to close out. If there are any final statements our panelists want to say, I really want to end on time to be respectful of the next panel or the lunch break. You know, that's important too. But just be respectful of people's time. Yeah.
Yeah, just thank you. Call us, email us. Don't call me, email me.
Well, thank you so much. I think it was a very informative panel. Everyone did such an excellent job providing information about this topic that we're all dealing with right now. So the next session, just for the participants, will be starting at 1 o'clock. So take a break. Lunch is from 12 to 1, and we hope to see you back at 1 o'clock. Thank you all, and thank you again, panelists, for doing such a wonderful job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Well,
you.
have a great
And
rest
thank
of the
you,
Everybody have a
conference.
Lily,
good
for
day.
letting us talk.
Yes.
Hey Sandra, could you stop the recording, please?